This is Midnight Sun. Unlike other supposedly ecological and sustainable documents and initiatives developed by international organisms, the Earth Charter is the only document that conveys the worldview that can lead us away from the climate and extinction quagmire into which, according to the French philosopher Bruno Latour, the prevailing modernist, anthropocentric, mechanistic and materialistic worldview has plunged us. An example of the much-needed alternative systemic worldview is found in one of the paradigmatic concepts of the Earth Charter, the community of life on Earth. This is what we are going to talk about today in Midnight Sun. We are going to talk about the Earth Charter, but also about another initiative of the international organizations that in the end we could say is an attempt for sustainability, which is misleading, because claiming that with this initiative they intend to change things, in real terms they are nothing more than small cosmetic changes so that the power structures remain as they are. If you think that this program does not concern you, perhaps you are mistaken. The climate on our planet, the climate and extinction crisis in which we are plunging, concerns us all. And we will have to remedy it, and we will have to do our part in this endeavor. Welcome to Midnight Sun.
Midnight Sun, directed by Grian Cutanda. Midnight Sun is a radio program that seeks to foster the process of social transformation needed to address the social, climate, and extinction emergency we are now entering. Our goal, that you put your talents at the service of the Earth and the terrestrial community of life. Join the tribe at the Midnight Sun, the social media hub of the Rainbow Warriors 3.5 global campaign.
So, welcome to Midnight Sun. In this episode, the 13th. At this point, we should have a few more episodes, but you know that we are doing what we can. And since, in addition, from this program, from this podcast, we have been launching a social movement called Rainbow Warriors 3.5, well, of course, it takes us a long time to set up this social movement, and that means that we don't have so much time to make Midnight Sun programs. But anyway, let's try at least to see if we can broadcast a new episode every month. Today we are going to talk, as I was saying before, about the Earth Charter, but also about another international document that has emerged as a response to climate change, that has emerged to try to give a semblance of sustainability. We will make a brief presentation. Well, we will bring here what was a brief 12-minute presentation at an online forum in which I was invited to participate on 24th July last. It was a forum which was broadcast from Edinburgh, Scotland, and was organized by the Edinburgh International Centre for Spirituality and Peace. It was an online forum with the title The Earth Charter, Spiritual, Social and Policy Perspectives. As I say, it was only 12 minutes, so the program is not going to be very long today either, but I think that it is worthwhile, that the content of what I presented there was worth recording on different social networks so that many more people can listen to it. This online forum involved, well, we had as moderator Dr. Michael Williams, who is an educator and storyteller based in Ontario, in Canada, although he is Scottish. We also had Dr. Sam Crowell, educator and writer, Earth Charter professor and researcher at the United Nations University for Peace. He has also taught at the University of Columbia and the State University of California in San Bernardino. We also had Kirsten Lisk, educator and project manager at Learning for Sustainability Scotland, and Dr. Miriam Vilela, educator and executive director of the Earth Charter, Secretariat, and coordinator of the UNESCO Chair in Education for Sustainable Development with the Earth Charter at the United Nations University for Peace. Miriam Vilela is also a recent member of the Club of Rome. She is a woman who has a long history of promoting sustainability and has participated in and organized important United Nations meetings and conferences. So, let's get to the content of our intervention in this online forum organized from Edinburgh in Scotland. As hard as the times ahead may be, at Midnight Sun we will keep believing that we can still build an alternative future. Our secret, radical hope, however unreal it may seem. Join the tribe of Midnight Sun. My intervention in this online forum had the title of Community of Life, a Deep Perception for a Necessary Worldview Shift, and it was as follows. We have an elephant in the room and nobody talks about it. It is not a secret that the 2030 Agenda, with its sustainable development goals, is currently one of the most pervasive international documents in our global society. We should certainly rejoice in this, after so many years of unchecked environmental destruction. But we should be aware that, as a whole, the SDGs have a factory defect in their DNA. This factory defect would have led the great anthropologist, social scientist, linguist and cyberneticist Gregory Bateson to say, through his theory of learning levels and social change, that the SDGs seek to change things just a bit so that nothing changes. I am referring here to the same defect that was in the DNA of the education for sustainable development when environmental education began to be annoying for certain power structures. And as with the ESD, there are sectors which try to convince us that it is wrong to criticize the SDGs, despite the fact that one of these goals, namely number 8, would eventually lead us to a collapse of civilization through the collapse of ecosystems. SDG 8 is the one that calls for economic growth, when in 2021 the United Nations Climate Change Panel warned in a leak that the growth is key to mitigating climate change. In fact, in the final report, in April 2022, the word degrowth appeared 28 times, although it did not appear at any point suspiciously in the report for policymakers. It was then that the reason for the leak of the scientists within the panel a few months before became clear. A leak received in her personal email by a friend of mine, Elena González Egea, an astrophysicist at the University of Granada and a member of Extinction Rebellion Granada, a group of which I was founder. But beyond SDG 8, what is the nature of the SDG elephant in the room that no one is talking about? Specifically, the problem lies in the worldview on which the SDGs are based. The same worldview which, according to French philosopher Bruno Latour, has brought us to the current climate and extinction crisis. That is, the worldview of modernity, which was very useful and was a blessing for humanity at the time, but which is long past its use-by date. This should lead us to the Einsteinian question of, are we really going to solve such a serious crisis with the same worldview that caused it? The Norwegian philosopher Arne Næss pointed out as early as 1989 that in order to develop sustainable communities, a shallow ecology that would not go to the deep source of the problem would not be enough. Hence, he developed his ecosophy of deep ecology. But even before, in the 1970s, both Gregory Bateson and the great systems dynamics expert Donella Meadows, lead scientist of the famous Limits to Growth research, pointed to a change in worldview as one of the fundamental and quickest levers to bring about the change in civilization that we now, 50 years later, find so pressing. Today, many scientists and philosophers are already stressing the idea that changing the dominant worldview in our global society is a crucial element in the struggle for survival on the planet. The SDGs, like the ESD, emerge from an anthropocentric worldview where humans are seen as the chosen species rather than a thread in the web of life. A materialistic worldview, where all other beings and elements in the planet are not seen as endowed with any kind of consciousness, where the only values to be taken into account are the material ones, above all, the economic ones, where all other beings are seen as possible raw materials and products to generate profits. A worldview based on reason alone, an instrumental reason, without emotion, ethics, or aesthetics. And from all this, also a mechanistic worldview, where the universe is seen as one big machine, composed of endless independent mechanisms and pieces, instead of seeing it as a big self-regulating organism, consisting of countless interdependent organisms, such as the Earth, ecosystems, the human organism itself, cells, atoms. This is the worldview that has brought us to the current climate and extinction crisis, and it is the same worldview from which the SDGs arise. They are a direct product of the prevailing power structures which stem from the modernity worldview.
Midnight Sun, the program of those who will be spoken of by future generations.
And from social sciences and philosophy, we are calling for the development and adoption of a worldview which, strange as it may seem, has been around for more than a century. For it is a worldview born from the developments of particle and relativity physics, from astronomical discoveries, and from the environmental sciences born from the study of ecosystems. We refer to an integral and integrative complex systems worldview, which studies the wholes of reality rather than their individual components, the processes and interdependencies rather than the objects artificially separated from the whole, from the system. An ecocentric worldview which denies human privileges over other species and ecosystems, based on consciousness and not on matter, seeing all other beings as fellow beings in the adventure of living. Brother wolf, brother sun, sister moon. A worldview that values reason, but does not privilege it over emotion, ethics, and aesthetics, which sees universe and reality around us as systems nested within larger and more complex systems. This is the elephant in the room that is the SDGs, and perhaps we should not ignore them too much, for as we say in Spanish, better that than nothing. Fortunately, however, we have another instrument developed by the international community which, unlike the SDGs, does emerge from the worldview we need to develop if we are to survive as a species. That instrument is the Earth Charter. Just by reading its preamble, we will find sentences that lead us back to the interdependencies and shared responsibility of complex systems, to the organism of a planet Earth who is considered alive, to a view of reality based on consciousness and not on matter, to a concept of human development based not on having, but on being, to the need for love and the preservation of beauty, and to a world where humans are just a thread in the web of life and the earth, and not her unconscious owners. And it is exactly on this last point that the Earth Charter offers us a priceless gift, the term and concept of community of life, a term it repeats up to 5 times, and once more as Earth Community. As my friends Dr. Alfonso Fernandez Herreria and Dr. Miguel Martinez Rodriguez from the University of Granada point out, this concept is in itself the greatest expression of the worldview we need to develop. The concept of community of life is directly linking us to the maps of consciousness development of the renowned psychologist Ken Wilber and his integral theory, where the idea and feeling of community of life would fall within the second tier, integral structure with its planet-centric, even cosmocentric worldview. It also brings us back to the identity expansion that Arne Naes talks about in his deep ecology philosophy, arising from the states of consciousness produced during long periods of immersion in nature. And it would connect us, of course, with the mystical experience of Francis of Assisi in his Canticle of the Creators. I would not deny that the Earth Charter has some flaws. For one thing, it uses the term sustainable development 3 times, a term inherent in an anthropocentric worldview. But if we are to have a widely agreed multicultural frame of reference for the development of new spiritual, social and political perspectives, which will enable us to overcome the serious crisis of extinction we face, we will have to make a solid commitment to the Earth Charter. And more importantly, we should include in our everyday language the term community of life, an expression with full reason, emotion, ethics and aesthetics. Just by using it, we are not only infusing ourselves with the worldview we need to develop, but we are making those who listen to us think and leading them to consider other possible ways of looking at the world around us. Do you know the Earth Charter? The Earth Charter is an international declaration of ethical principles for the respect and care of life, ecological integrity, social and economic justice, democracy, non-violence and peace. But it is also a worldwide movement which seeks to inspire in all people a new sense of global interdependence and shared responsibility for the well-being of the whole human family, the community of life and future generations, thus becoming a vision of hope and a call to action. Learn more about the Earth Charter at earthcharter.org. Earth Charter, turning conscience into action. This was the speech I gave on 24 July at a forum organized by the Edinburgh International Centre for Spirituality and Peace, to which I was invited along with other leading colleagues. But this presentation would possibly have been more well-rounded if we had been able to include a story, something that would have given it that aesthetic aspect. A story, a tale, a legend, a myth. In this case, we would have included, we didn't do it in this event because we didn't have time, we would have included what we are going to include here in today's program. It is a story from the Earth Stories collection, a global project run by the same people who run Midnight Sun, albeit through the Avalon Project, an NGO that we started years ago. But in short, we are the same people who are managing both initiatives. In the Earth Stories collection, we are compiling myths, legends, and folk tales from around the globe, specifically selected to convey the worldview we were talking about a few minutes ago, the systemic and integrative worldview that can lead us out of this climate and extinction crisis. The story we are going to include today is indeed from Francis of Assisi, whom we mentioned in the previous presentation. And although it must be acknowledged that this account by Francis is still suffering from an anthropocentric worldview, it must be recognized that in his time it would have been very difficult not to be anthropocentric, with a Judeo-Christian spiritual tradition that has always been, since the book of Genesis, absolutely centered on the human being as the master of creation. We are talking about a text written in 1246, and it is already a significant fact that Francis of Assisi had a vision of the world in which, in spite of anthropocentrism, he assumed in some way the concept of the community of life on earth. The short story I am about to read to you is entitled Love for All the Creatures and comes from the Legend of Perugia, written by Leo of Assisi in 1246. When he, Francis of Assisi, washed his hands, he chose a place where the water of these ablutions should not be trodden by his feet. When he had to walk on stones, his step was gentle and respectful for the love of the one who is called stone. If he recited the passage of the psalm, "Thou didst exalt me upon a rock," out of reverence and devotion, he changed it to, "Under the foot of the rock hast thou exalted me." To the brother who cut the wood for the monk's fire, he recommended that he not cut the whole tree, but only a part, so that the plant could continue to live. The same be ordered to a brother who was where he resided. To the brother who cultivated the garden, he told him not to dedicate all the land to the cultivation of edible vegetables, but to set aside some part so that it would produce green grass and, in their time, sisters' flowers. Moreover, he said that brother gardener should have in some place of the garden a beautiful garden where he cultivated all kinds of aromatic herbs and plants with beautiful blooms. This in order to, in their season, invite all those who contemplated them to praise God, because every creature says and proclaims, "God hath made me on account of thee, O man." We, who have lived with him, have been able to appreciate how he found a motive of intimate joy in almost all creatures, a joy which he manifested interiorly, how he caressed them and contemplated them lovingly, as if his spirit were not on earth, but in heaven. And it is true and manifest that because of the many consolations he had received from the creatures of God, he composed, shortly before his death, some praises of the Lord for his creatures, to move the hearts of those who heard them to praise God, and so that the Lord would be praised by all in his creatures. This is the account of Leo of Assisi in 1246, speaking of Francis of Assisi. Francis could be said to be an atypical saint in Christianity, among other things because of his obvious love for the natural world, which he saw as a way to the spiritual world and the hate of the divine. This fact, within a religion that since shortly after its beginning tried to draw a radical line of separation with everything that was natural, instinctive, or even intuitive, considering it as sinful or at least a way of temptation and perversion for the human being, makes Francis a true spiritual innovator in his tradition. In this way, the mystic of Assisi opened a path of connection between the Christian faithful and their natural environment, providing an opportunity for the development of a deep spirituality through the simple contemplation of nature. Do you work in education, storytelling, communication, or social work? We invite you to discover the Earth Stories Collection. The Earth Stories Collection is a global bank of myths, legends, and folk tales capable of transforming the worldview of societies for the development of a more just, peaceful, and sustainable civilization. These traditional stories, belonging to cultures all over the world, are free to access and download at theearthstoriescollection.org. The Earth Stories Collection, a global bank of educational resources for the construction of another possible world. Well, today we have been talking about some things related to these international documents concerning sustainability. All of this was prompted by a speech I gave on 24 July at the online forum organized by the Edinburgh International Centre for Spirituality and Peace in Scotland. In this intervention, we talk about the serious problem afflicting the Sustainable Development Goals, SDGs. Although, despite their shortcomings, the SDGs are better than nothing. It is better that we have the 2030 agenda than nothing at all to start respecting terrestrial ecosystems. Despite that, well, the SDGs really are problematic because they are based on the very worldview that has brought us to this climate and extinction crisis. We have explained it, we have detailed it. We have also talked about the suitability of the Earth Charter, an international document that has been fully inclusive in its development. We encourage you to learn more about the Earth Charter at earthcharter.org. This international document is based on the worldview that we need to develop in order to overcome the sustainability crisis we are facing on this planet. And we have talked specifically about a concept that appears in the Earth Charter and that we think is the highest expression of this worldview that we need to develop, the concept of the community of life. Finally, we have told you a story from the Earth Stories Collection, which is a global bank for educational purposes, a global bank of myths, legends, and traditional tales from around the world selected to convey this worldview and to transmit the principles and values of the Earth Charter. We have told you a story about Francis of Assisi, with which we wanted to illustrate the idea of community of life. If you have joined this program, we invite you to listen to the rest of the programs we have broadcast so far, and to follow us on the social networks and podcast platforms where we are broadcasting this program. We invite you to follow us on Midnight Sun because ultimately it will bring immediate benefits to your life. Even if you think that this program is only about building a better world and that it is not about you, think that if the world is better in some way, it will be better for you too. On the other hand, simply by changing your worldview, as we have been explaining today and as we have detailed in previous episodes of this program, your life will also improve, as you will better adapt your behaviors to the existence in the world you live in. Follow us on Midnight Sun.
According to leading social science research, we need 3.5% of the world's population to put their talents into action if we are to mitigate the effects of the climate and extinction emergency we are facing. And that is the aim of this radio space. Midnight Sun is the communication hub of the Rainbow Warriors 3.5 global campaign.
We are going to say goodbye now. Thank you for following us this far. Thank you for listening to us. And thanks to all the people who collaborate with us in this program. Thanks to Kim Robertson, the Celtic harp player who provides us with the tune of the program and who generously lends it to us so that we can use it here. Thanks to John Mario Diaz from Radio Chacaruna, from where we started broadcasting this program. Thanks to Blake Kendall, who also provides his voice for free so that we can make some call signs across the space. And thanks to Marta Ventura, who is the soul of Midnight Sun, the helmswoman who steers the Midnight Sun boat. And before I finish, a call to action. We invite you to be part of the Tribe of All Colors, which is the social movement that we have launched from this program, a social movement called Rainbow Warriors 3.5. RW 3.5 is a social movement with which we aim to create tribes which work to mitigate the climate and extinction crisis. They can do it from any possible endeavor, from reforesting mountains to creating awareness-raising videos, from educational campaigns to mobilizations on social networks. You can do an infinite number of things. The main idea is put your talents, whatever they may be, at the service of the earth and the community of life. And the idea is that all tribes are interconnected through Rainbow Warriors 3.5. Tribes from all over the world interconnected with each other, because the goal is to reach the 3.5% of the world's population that we need to reach in order to mitigate climate change. But we need all people to get on board. No matter how small you feel, no matter how insignificant you feel, no matter how small you think your contribution might be. Here, in Rainbow Warriors 3.5, it can mean a great deal. And we say goodbye now. Thank you for joining us here at Midnight Sun. May the sun shine for you at midnight.
To avoid the social collapse we are heading towards because of the climate and extinction emergency, we are going to need 3.5% of the population to take action. That means we need help. Lots of help. If you have an independent radio station and want to share Midnight Sun's radio programs on it, find out more at midnightsun.com.es/broadcasting. Midnight Sun, the social media hub of the Rainbow Warriors 3.5 global campaign.
Midnight Sun, el sol de medianoche.